everyone, and welcome back to Ghouls Night In, your spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark.
And I'm Midge Munster.
And today, I wanted to take some time,
Take a time.
as much time as I want, to talk about a queer horror icon, Vincent Price.
Oh my gosh, yay! I've been waiting for this episode.
Yes, so Midge obviously knows I am a huge Vincent Price fan,
Yes.
and he's just a very cool dude. And I mean, we've talked about this in, I think, pretty much every episode that we've talked about, like, horror specifically, but obviously there's a lot of people today who are going back and interpreting horror movies from a queer lens,
Yes.
and it's good to know that queer people have been part of horror from the beginning, so...
Yes, we have. We're here, we're queer, and we love fear.
Hell yeah. No, that's a t-shirt. Are you a Vincent Price fan? Have you watched Vincent Price movies?
I am such a Vincent Price dork. Yes, I'm just thrilled that we're doing this.
Yes. Excellent.
He's like my first like spooky memory. Like,
Ooh.
he's core spooky memory for me. I remember hearing his voice for the first time and being like, what is this?
Oh, I know. Such an iconic voice. I love it.
Yes.
So I wanted to start right out the gate, just kind of talking about the question of Vincent Price's queerness. Obviously, you can't say with 100% certainty any person who is not still with us and has not publicly commented themselves. But throughout his entire career, there were a lot of reports and rumors that it was kind of an open secret in Hollywood that he had relationships with men. And his daughter, Victoria, did actually say her quote was, "I am as close to certain as I can be that my dad had physically intimate relationships with men. I know for 100% fact that my dad was completely loving and supportive of LGBT people." Victoria was a lesbian and said that when she came out to her dad, he told her that he understood because he had intimate relationships with men and that his wives were always jealous of that.
Vincent.
Right. Obviously, back in, for those who don't know, spoiler alert, Vincent Price's acting career began in the 1930s. So not something that a lot of people were talking about back then. And Lord knows bi visibility specifically is still tough today. So I am happy to have Vincent Price as a bi horror icon.
A bicon, yeah.
Yes.
Well, and that's even, even if he, let's say for some reason they were like, no, he's not gay or queer at all. Like, he's still a queer icon. Like, he's still, like, like in the way that Beyonce is not gay, but she's an icon to the queers. Like, we claim Vincent regardless of his sexuality.
Yes, very, very true. So Vincent Price was born in 1911. So he was born to a very wealthy family who made their fortune from baking powder. What?
My dad invented toaster strudel.
Right. It was.
Very that energy.
This. Yeah. His grandfather created Dr. Price's baking powder, which was the first baking powder that was made with cream of tartar. Oh. I don't know what it was made with before. I mean, probably arsenic from what we know.
Right. Something poisonous for sure.
Right. Yeah. But so they had this family fortune from this great baking powder invention.
How could he walk away from the family business when it's so lucrative?
Right.
Oh, man.
But he did go to college and studied English and art history, and he moved to London and was actually planning to get a master's in fine arts there. We'll talk a little bit later about kind of the art side of Vincent Price. But while he was in London, he was drawn to the stage, and he started his acting career on stage in London in 1935.
Incredible. I feel like that's the tale of us all. Like, at some point you get lured by the siren's call of the theater.
Fame in the theater. It is a siren indeed. And he was in his first film in 1938 in a movie called Service Deluxe. And his first horror film was actually in 1939. He was in Boris Karloff's Tower of London. So
Yes.
he got started with horror right from the beginning.
He has a distinct air about him that gives horror. Like,
He does. He does.
I
It
can't
was
imagine him doing anything else.
well, see, and that's what I think too, but so he was in over 100 movies over the course of his career, and only like a third of that were horror films.
Interesting.
So, like, he was in a lot of leading man roles in his youth, especially. He was a very, very handsome gentleman. He played a lot of like villainous, like film noir characters.
Now that makes sense to me.
Yes. And it was really in the 1950s when he started to enter kind of like this classic horror period that we really know him from. He was in the original House of Wax in 1953,
Yes.
then immediately in The Fly and Return of the Fly, and then in probably my favorite Vincent Price movie, House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah.
Yes, in 1959. That was one of the first like kind of scary movies that I watched and like was really into. Like, I mean, it helps that like it's in black and white, so it's a little bit more chill. But
Yeah.
I was very scared of like the skeleton part and stuff.
No, definitely. Well, and you might be getting into this. My Vincent Price kind of, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like the reason I became really familiar with
Mhm.
him is because I'm such a Edgar Allan Poe junkie.
Yes, yes.
And
That's in
he,
fact the next note
yeah,
in my bit.
take it
Yes.
away, Ernie.
Oh yeah, just I think it said like starting in the 60s he was in a ton of Edgar Allan Poe adaptations and he was a
Hmm.
huge Poe fan. He also, recorded a selection of Poe poems and short stories. And there is, the famous photo of him with the stuffed raven at the Edgar Allan Poe Museum.
Yes. Yeah, he did like The Raven. He did The Mask of Red Death, and
Mm.
that one's really, really good. Did like, oh, what's the buried alive like
Oh, the Cask of Amontillado.
oh no, but that's
Oh, a
also
different one.
but also yes. Uh
The Pit and the Pendulum.
no, The Oblong Box. The Oblong
Oh, yep.
Box.
I love you. See, obviously, we're going to have to do a Poe episode one day, so we won't go into it here, but I just
Oh
love that you
yeah.
can say the buried alive one, and we're immediately like,
12
oh,
different.
here's like four different options.
Apparently that was a real fear that Poe had.
Understandable. And he was just, a huge icon, and he continued to act through, the 70s, 80s, 90s, and I think it's really cool that like he started getting a lot of these kind of like self-referential roles because he was such an icon.
Yes.
Obviously he did the monologue for Thriller, so
Hmm.
cool,
Which I think is
excellent.
probably a lot of people our age, probably their first.
Hmm.
One of two things comes to mind for my first exposure to Vincent Price, and one of them is Thriller, and I bet you're about to talk about the other one.
Well, there are several in here. I would say that one of I think my very first exposure to Vincent Price was as the notorious Professor Radigan in The Great Mouse
Oh
Detective.
my gosh, yes. I actually forgot about that, but
Yes.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. He hosted the like mystery anthology series on PBS, which was like the mysteries version of Masterpiece Theater. He voiced a character on 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo called Vincent Van Ghoul. And what I assume that you were thinking of, his last theatrical appearance was in Edward Scissorhands as
Yeah.
the inventor, which
Little
was
old man looking so
yes.
cute.
One of my other favorite things about Vincent Price is that he clearly didn't take himself super seriously because he appeared
No.
in so many like doofy horror themed commercials. And if you are not familiar with them, for anyone listening, I highly recommend just like searching Vincent Price commercials on YouTube because there's a ton of them. And there's just so many of them where he just, does his horror shtick and is just like, dirty tile is terrifying.
I don't know if I've ever seen any of those.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
gonna give it a
Yes.
goog.
Definitely Goog it. And one interesting crossover from a previous episode that I actually didn't realize is Vincent Price recorded narration for Phantom Manor, which is the haunted mansion
Oh,
in
in
Disneyland
Paris.
Paris. And so he actually recorded it in 1990, and then it was only up for a little bit, but before they replaced it with one that was in French.
Hmm.
But when they renovated Phantom Manor in 2018, they introduced a dual language track and they used Vincent Price's original recording alongside the French version.
That's so yeah, I actually now that I forgot that I knew that, but then you said it. Um one of I don't know, yeah, no, she does listen to the podcast. One of our listeners, I'm going to look up her thing real quick. Steam and Kittens is
Oh,
her
yeah.
yeah, her Instagram tag. She was just at Phantom Manor and was messaging me about it and told me that it was Vincent Price's voice,
I
and I was like,
love
that
that.
is so stinking cool.
Yeah, I
um
think it's so cool that like it didn't end up getting used and then it came back like that.
Well, and you would think like it's interesting that it's in France. Like you would think because he was such an icon here, they would have if they were going to
Right?
do it, like they would have done it for the American version. But no, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's very, very, very cool stuff. And just another Tim Burton shout out is Tim Burton did make a short called Vincent, which is about a boy fantasizing about being Vincent Price, and Vincent Price did do the narration for that.
Oh my god, I didn't know that existed.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to watch that.
Yeah, that's one of his like very early kind of like short film things.
Instead of a puberty coming of age, it's that, the thing we all go through where we fantasize about being Vincent Price.
Right, the real dream.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I went through a period where I was watching just like a lot of these very like schlocky 60s horror films that were on Amazon
I love
Prime.
that for you.
So good, and there were a wide variety and several of them did have Vincent Price in there. And it's just any role he's in, he is obviously having the best time and just going wholeheartedly into it, and I love it.
He's definitely a person that I think like, my friends and I now talk a lot about like Doja Cat, like people that are outside the simulation who like who like have just figured it out that like life is not all that freaking serious. And I feel like that was Vincent Price. Like he like you said, he knew that he was kind of this caricature of a person and he just went with it. And that's what made his staying power so long lasting because he was just this ridiculous almost I mean he was almost like an alien to me. Like there's no way this human person exists. He's
Right?
too
Just
weird and
too cool,
wonderful.
just too
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah, and one of the things that was interesting that I appreciated is it was kind of talking about how, like, I think this was in the 70s. Let me just double check my notes really quick. Yes, in 77. He apparently was kind of feeling like, he was this iconic figure, but like he really wanted to, continue honing his acting chops. And he did a one man stage play in which he plays a fictional version of Oscar Wilde. Um,
So
and it
yeah,
was
tell me you're not queer.
right. I know exactly. I was like,
Hmm.
interesting. And it was like a huge smash hit, apparently. And like it was one of the roles he was proudest of. And like a lot of the family like thought that it was like his best performance. And he toured that like all around the country,
Wow.
which would have been, I mean, not that I don't love like the theater that we have today, but like, can you imagine like today, like a cool movie star being like, I'm going to tour my weird one man show all over and people
Yeah.
can just come and see it. I'm like, I want to do that. I want to see that.
Yeah, that's the type of fame I aspire to have where I can just throw money at ridiculous things that I want to do and people will be like, "Yeah, I want to see that."
Yes. So, in addition to his life as a horror icon, Vincent Price was also a huge art collector. As we mentioned before, he had, been intending really to go into the arts, and he was really, passionate about social issues as well. And that kind of led to the founding of the Vincent Price Art Museum at East LA College. He and his second wife really felt like it was important for the students there to experience, art and really get to be part of, the art world. And they donated, ultimately by the end, 2,000 pieces from their personal collection.
Wow.
And this was the first like art collection, a teaching art collection owned by a community college. And today there are over 9,000 pieces there. So it's continued to, grow in the past. So it's just very cool. He was very passionate about that. He also was specifically very passionate about Native artists
Hmm.
and actually served as commissioner of the Indian Arts and Crafts Board,
Oh,
which like
interesting.
promotes economic development for Native artists. And there's like 3 different museums that it manages, as well as like, advocating for like public policy
Mm-hmm.
work. And he actually sponsored the Vincent Price Creative Writing Awards at the Institute of American Indian Arts. Apparently, he visited there and like was really impressed by some of the writing students and just wanted to encourage that and created this fellowship and award program there to give people, some funding for their creation.
That is so cool. I did not know that about him.
Yes. Many of us will know he is also a talented gourmet cook. He did have a food show in the UK and has several cookbooks. I always love seeing people share photos when they find like a Vincent Price cookbook. They
Yes.
were obviously out of print for a long time, but his daughter got some of them reprinted in recent years.
I want to now. I just want to make a whole. Now my brain is spinning. Like that could be a whole series on YouTube just making Vincent
Yes.
Price's
Making Vincent Price recipes,
recipes.
which
Uh,
is so cool. And just as we kind of mentioned when I was talking about the art, but he was a outspoken enemy of fascism, promoting equality. And it's interesting because so he obviously came from a very wealthy Protestant
mm-hmm.
family and had, I believe most of this is from Victoria Price's biography of him, but like grew up, with a lot of anti-Semitism and anti-Catholic sentiment. And apparently even like when he was living in Europe in the 1930s was kind of like swept up in like the, German pride kind of thing that
Mm-hmm.
they were promising over there, but by 1938 had like fully renounced all of that. And he was actually gray listed by McCarthyism for being quote prematurely anti-Nazi, because that
What a
was a
great thing to
thing,
be, honestly, though.
right? And yeah, and like that's not something that our podcast can go into, but I definitely recommend kind of reading up on some history for sort of what there was a huge amount of anti-Semitism and pro-Nazi sentiment in America during that time. So great to see that he was like, actually, no, I'm really not into this. He was on the board of PFLAG, which is, the parents support organization for queer people. And also, apparently, Anita Bryant made a comment about him playing Oscar Wilde or something like that. And he just shut that shit down and was very critical of her and her anti-gay promotions. So
Incredible. An icon before his time.
an icon before his time for sure. Very cool and supportive of
Vincent Price
everybody.
said human rights.
Hell yeah.
There's
But
another shirt. Vincent Price said human rights.
yes. But yeah, that is my kind of brief whirlwind history of Vincent Price. He was just a really great dude and very talented, made obviously a huge impact on the world of horror film and everything like that, but was also very, creative, artsy, just kind of a Renaissance man, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Have you ever have you ever seen the SNL sketches where Bill Hader plays Vincent Price?
Oh, so I think I have seen some of that.
It's one of my I am a that would not fit into the realm of this podcast, but I am a huge SNL junkie. I could
Yeah.
tell you the entire like verbal history of that show. And that sketch is one of my favorite recurring characters. We'll definitely have to like share a little clip in our stories on Instagram or something when this episode drops, because he plays it so well and he nails that like absurdism that Vincent had about him, where he didn't like, he was in on the joke, you know? Like, and it's so freaking funny. It's like him hosting, you know, like a party, or like I think it's supposed to be like him hosting kind of like a TV special for something, you know, like Halloween or whatever.
Yeah.
And oh my God, they're so well done. It has me rolling on the floor every time.
I think my other favorite Vincent Price appearance is I think it was on Sesame Street, where he's there with Kermit, and Kermit is a vampire and bites him.
Don't know about this.
Oh my God, it's so good. I love it. And when in it, he's talking to Kermit, and he goes, "Oh well, I never met a monster I didn't like." And I was like, same
Samesies.
Vincent.
That's cute as heck.
I know.
We'll have to make like if I ever have children, I'm gonna make like a Vincent anthology of all the important
Yes.
Vincent references, so they are up to the date on him.
Incredible. Well, for all of our ghouls out there, we would love to know what your favorite Vincent Price movie or appearance is. It can be a wacky commercial if you would like. I respect that.
Yeah.
I respect that
That's what
choice.
I'll be doing with my afternoon after this, is looking up Vincent Price commercials and him with Kermit the Frog.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us for Ghouls Night In today. If you enjoyed the show, we would love it if you would leave a review. I think that we have a new review to share today.
We sure do. Let me just grab that. So today we have a review from Todd the Sith, and this review is titled Delightfully Dark. 5 stars. My son and I love tuning in to Penny and Midge each week on our drive to school. Oh, that's so cute. It is both informative and funny. We often pause to discuss the topics further. I love that. Keep up the great work. P.S. We believe in ghosts. Suck it, Penny. I have talked about arsenic-laden clothes and candies several times this week. Goodbye.
Excellent. I love it, and I hope if you're listening now, have a good day at school.
Yes, thank you so much for both listening to us, and I'm glad that our wiles here can spur further discussion for y'all. That's awesome.
Yes. If you would like to follow along with the podcast, you can find us on Instagram at Ghouls Night In Pod. We will be posting some handsome Vincent Price photos over there this
some
week.
Vincent thirst traps.
Vincent thirst traps. You don't want to miss that. And if you are looking for me, you can find me at Penny Snark.
And you can find me across all platforms at Midge Munster.
And until next time,
Goodbye.
Goodbye.